Thank you very much and welcome our viewers and our followers on social media. This is the Fixo, the one we have every Friday evening. We come here to the studios at Brusubi Phase 1. And of course, today we also have one of the most prominent guests on our show, and he's actually been here before. And we will be talking about his stance on critical issues that matters to the Gambia. When he came here the last time, we discussed political issues, of course, some financial issues, but then he was wearing a cap of an ordinary member of the country, ordinary member of a party, ordinary member of people that were trying to set up, of course, a political party. And today we will observe his stance on critical issues on matters that really matter for the Gambians. And of course, as the introduction says, the Fix. So every Friday at Teledal Brusubi Phase 1, we will be back right after this short break.
Scan the QR code and register on My Official app, and boom, you get 1 GB free instantly. Just scan, download, register, and enjoy. Check your balance, browse bundles, send and receive money instantly, pay bills in seconds, anytime, anywhere.
We welcome our viewers to another episode of The Fix. So, like I said in my introduction, on every Friday we come here and we discuss and we look at Lamin J Darboe's stance on critical issues that matter to the Gambia. And of course, we will really dwell into the topics of current affairs, come up with solutions, and he will tell us today, as he came from a long experience of being a member of a former political party and then forming a new political party or becoming a flag bearer of a new political party. Lamin J. Darboe, you are welcome to The Fix once more, and we are honored to host you this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jal. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Mr. Darboe, you actually came here the last time, and you actually told us that you are going to be a member of a political party, whereas you will become a political head of other parties or a coalition. And also, at the time, you didn't even have a movement. At the time, you were still considered somebody who just left UDP. Today, where are we?
Well, today is a new beginning. The National Unity Party.
NUP.
NUP, in the interim, after I left the UDP and was putting together an independent movement for an independent candidacy. Then I was contacted by particular individuals who I realized were members or are members of the National Unity Party. We held a series of meetings, and so eventually I was appointed the Secretary General and party leader of the National Unity Party. It all happened so quickly because we're talking September. This whole thing, the flag bearer contests in the UDP took place around the middle of September. So, yeah.
Today you are the flag bearer and, of course, the Secretary General of the National Unity Party. Well, we will give credit back to Ibrahima, of course, Jame before, who was there. Abdullah Jame before. I mean, may his soul rest in peace, that he's a brother. And this is a party that we were looking forward to seeing what it could have done to contribute to the political spheres of this country. But Mr. Darboe, you coming from UDP, the last time you came here, you made a statement that they've got something wrong when they did the math, when they're choosing the flag bearer. That kind of trended, and people looked at it as you were still upset and you were part of the people that made that mistake. Would you think such a mistake wouldn't appear in any other political party, or will it still continue happening at the UDP based on what you know from them?
Well, I would rather we move to the future. That is really in the past. I've made a statement. It was never challenged by the UDP. So I'm happy to let bygones be bygones. I'll concentrate on the future.
Would you still have a chance if UDP says, Lamin Darboe is our Lamin Darboe, so therefore we might go to a coalition?
Well, this is not, or it should not be about individuals. It should be about the country. So, yes, if people say let's talk about coalitions, and several such negotiations are taking place, or at least informal statements, formal statements are taking place. So we don't know where that will lead us ultimately, but, you know, individual should close the door. You are leading an institution, but you are not the institution. It's not yours. So you leave that decision. Of course, you'll participate in the talks, but the decision ultimately should be left to the institution, that is, to the political party. As the head, obviously, you will have a say in it, but I believe parties should make the ultimate decisions.
As a unit?
Yes.
Are you with the view of people that say that no single party would remove an incumbent in this country? It has to be a coalition. Or do you believe that a party like NUP would be able to unseat people like Barrow?
Well, I can see merit in the idea, or the belief that it would be very difficult, almost impossible for a single party to challenge the incumbent. But that in itself is an unfortunate aspect of our public life. Yes. When you come to office, you monopolize public power. You do what you want to do to remain in power indefinitely. So that is not because, in our case, the NPP is a big party that you cannot challenge. It is a question of the monopoly that is created by the incumbent. The unwillingness to create a space that would cater to the needs of the country. So when you are in office, what do they think about? They think about how we can enhance ourselves, our own political fortunes, using the public space, using public power, using public resources.
Is that what you're saying Barrow is doing?
That is what Darboe is doing. That was what Yahya Jammeh did. That was what Sir Dawda did. Okay. It is not the individual. It is just the capturing of the state by a segment of the society to advance a personal or sectional idea or sectional power. That's all. It has nothing to do with Barrow.
With the individual,
yes,
which I highly appreciate.
Yes, it has nothing to do with the individual. It is just the way we set up our public space. If somebody else comes to power and we have the same mentality, the same system, obviously, that is what is going to happen. Like I said, I don't look at Barrow, His Excellency, and compare him with other people in the sense of saying, this person is better than the president. You know, I don't believe in that. People operate within the systems that either they created or they found there to enhance their own advantages over their competitors. Yeah.
But I mean, Mr. Darboe, it's well been publicized around that the more people that move from major political parties, disintegrate that party, form new parties. We have so many parties that are now coming up and are already established, would always give the chance to the incumbent to become the leader of this country for a long time, because there are so many of them, the multi-party system. Are you of the same view?
Well, I wouldn't say the multi-party.
Because they said the problem that accorded the UDP to a point that majority of them left, or so many of them left, has now given the NPP the chance to stay in power.
Well, the issue is more complicated than that. That is a simple way to look at complex issues. Yes, a simple way to look at complex issues. There is a systemic imbalance in our public life. And obviously, those who served in government, those who had the opportunity to serve in government, at whatever level, from other political parties, whether you are the head of state, or whether you are a vice president, or whether you served in some other capacity within the cabinet. Yes, wherever you serve, you all sit there and refuse to create a system that would respond ultimately to the needs of the Gambian people. So what do you get? You get an imbalance. But otherwise, I am of the view that if we manage our public life properly, then certainly there is a possibility for an opposition party to unseat an incumbent. There is that possibility, yeah. But to say it is impossible is itself a commentary on our refusal to govern ourselves properly. We are not governing ourselves properly. We're just giving power and leaving it to the man at the State House at any given time. Like I said, it has nothing to do with any one individual. We allow that system to exist, and we allow that system to flourish, and it flourished magnificently over all these years of our public life.
Well, we're just reminding our viewers that they're following us on Teledal, and this is our weekly show, The Fix, and I am your host, Mohamed Jallow. Today in the studios, we've got Lamin J. Darboe, a former member of the UDP. Today is the flag bearer and the Secretary General for the National Unity Party. Mr. Darboe, it's quite often said, when time goes, so many things people tend to forget. But I'm still bringing this to your attention. What is your view of the budget, which was done after when you left the studio the last time? There's a national budget that was brought on board. It was reviewed, ratified, approved. Of course, they had to bring in a certificate of urgency. What's your view of that?
Well, again, national institutions operate as they wish. You know, there has been a Supreme Court decision on the budget, but it is not this one. It was the last budget, because the minister brought the budget late, and the speaker, and of course his colleagues in the National Assembly, believed that they could ignore the constitutional strictures on those particular issues and do what they wish to do. The Supreme Court made it very clear. The National Assembly and every other institution or office is subject to the strictures of the Constitution. If you do anything that is not in conformity with what the Constitution mandated, that conduct, that act is unlawful. But now, if you look at the budget as well, you know, it is negotiated at the level of the government. Different departments would come in, even the independent arms of government, like the judiciary, the National Assembly, of course, the budget comes from the executive arm of government. So they negotiate these things, ultimately reach an agreement. Is the process foolproof? No, maybe not, but you know, these are national leaders. If they say this is how we believe, national resources should be used within the next 12 months, you give them the benefit of the doubt.
Now, the issue here is, as a legal person, of course, yes, today you are into politics, but your academic background is law, which you've been really good at, and of course you're a member of the bar as well. So I was just wondering, if an executive or an arm of government as premium as the National Assembly refuse or ignore what the Constitution says when it comes to revenue utilization, what should the legal framework provide?
Well, my academic background is in history.
Is it?
And public affairs.
So
history and public affairs.
How did law come to play?
Law is something I just happen to do.
Okay.
But if you take history and look at it within the overall context of the public life of the country, obviously that is politics. What is happening today in the political arena will become history tomorrow.
True.
Yes. So like Cicero said, history is politics on the wings. What is happening today will become history tomorrow. But it is all politics. Yeah. So if you study history, and you studied it not to pass exams, then you're as good to operate in any field. Yeah, any field, any administrative field.
Very good.
Yes.
This week, I had a conversation with the Minister of Finance, and I look forward to having him on one-on-one here at the studio or at his office this coming week. If you were to sit with Sidi, what would you ask him?
Well, I'm not a journalist.
Yes, I'm just saying, as a national citizen, as a member of the NUP, as somebody who wants to see change in this government, as somebody who's aspiring to be a president of this country.
Well, I would ask him if he's really, really committed to the rule of law.
I'll say yes, and on his behalf, oh, he's committed. And then the first thing I said to him was, in as much as I criticized the budget, I think a lot of work has been put there. That budget was well articulated, the wordings were good, and you could see how much energy he was putting into it. And he even talked about new aspects of investment, insurance and stuff. But again, as somebody who would want to be probably his boss, let's say, for example, as a president, you are the head of the Minister of Finance, today is Sidi, what would you have asked him to say this?
Well, I'm not looking at just the budget that you are referring to.
Please.
The reason why I said I'll ask him if he's committed to the rule of law. There is a constitutional stipulation on when the Minister of Finance can lay the budget before the National Assembly. He did not do it. He pretended it was not important. So there was a scuffle in the National Assembly. A Minister of Finance, if you take rankings within the cabinet, it's within the first four ministries. Yes, so it's a very, very important position. If you are in that position, you must discharge your responsibility judiciously within time. Yes, if you didn't do that, you must not go and hide behind the National Assembly and say, please, help me pass this. And when the matter went to court, before you challenge it, you know, you should just prevail on your cabinet colleagues to say, you know, let's concede. We'll just say we'll not do this again, and that's it. So for me, what you say, you know, the budget, the fantasies about what you'll be doing, we've had those things over the years. We'll do this, we'll do that. We've been hearing it for a very long time. I've been following public affairs, writing about it since 1992. So the fact that you are in cabinet today doesn't mean anything to me when it comes to the just creating headlines that mean nothing to you or to the public. Do what you have to do it properly, do it adequately, do it within the law. That's what we want to see.
Very good. Again, like I said, I am your host, Mohamed Jallo, and this is our weekly show, The Fix. Mr. Darboe, we have here today, the flag bearer and the Secretary General of the National Unity Party. Mr. Darboe, as far as presidency is concerned, like you said, history matters. What would you rate in terms of perfection, implementation, projects that are realized under the Barrow administration in 2025 that you would say this is well done? However, you might also have some of the things you might call them either challenges or things that they did not do right. How would you do this? How would you tell them this vis-a-vis what we are seeing today? How would you look at 2025, knowing today we are in 2026? Did they do well?
Well, you have to ask specific questions. This is a wide...
It's a wide one, exactly. That's what I'm looking at.
It's a wide open question.
Right.
We can say the infrastructural developments that are taking place, especially the roads.
Road construction.
When we talk about infrastructure, we're not talking about roads alone, but roads are very important because those are things that we see. But we can look at telecommunications infrastructure. We can look at maritime infrastructure. We can look at all of those things. But the roads are good. The roads are good. The roads have opened up not only the country, but even within the greater Banjul area. Say, for example, now I can leave my office and be in Banjul within 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah, if you leave your driver to do what he wants to do, maybe 10 minutes.
You'll fly on the road.
But of course, that will not happen.
You're right.
We have the road. That is important. But I always insist on governance. I believe that is the future. That is where the management capacities of government comes in. That is where limited government comes in. Government must restrain itself. You cannot do the things that you want to do, even if they are against the law. You cannot do that. There is a margin of discretion, a margin of error, but make sure even those margins are kept within the boundaries of the law. You can argue about it. There is no blatancy about it. So it's not like, 80% wrong and 20% right. You balance it. Maybe 40, 60, 50, 50, not 50, 50, 40, 60, acceptable. 55, 45, acceptable. But 80, 20, 90, 10, those things are not acceptable. I always insist. I said we will remember the president. I once wrote that in a commentary, that we will remember him not by the structures, the physical structures that he left behind, but his legacy of governance under law. Very, very important. When you talk about the rule of law, what we are talking about is restraining authority. It's not easy. Authority does not want to be restrained. But if you are interested in your legacy, and the president does say that he's thinking about his legacy.
All the time?
Yeah, okay, he talks about that. But your legacy must be about governance. What will you leave in the Gambia when you are not there? The buildings will eventually collapse. We would have to think about other roads, or the infrastructure, technological infrastructure, physical infrastructure, maritime infrastructure. We have to be thinking about all of those. So we'll renew them as time goes on. But the structures of government, those are fundamental. You cannot joke with them. If you don't understand them, if you don't believe in them, then there will be no legacy. We've seen this. We've seen it here, the previous government. Nobody can say it didn't do anything in the Gambia. Yes, today you are part of a private television station. Yes. Yesterday, there was no television station up to 1994. There was no station, no television station. So, but, so we didn't miss those because we didn't have them. But if our governance is correct, then, other things will come in. Governance is the key. The main difference between other countries, say you take the United States, you take the United Kingdom, others would say, no, don't use them. They're imperialist countries. Colonialism, neo-colonialism. You can accept all of those arguments. Sure. But we are not looking at that. What I'm looking at is democracy in the domestic context, where the leaders are answerable to their people. When you are involved in foreign adventure, say, for example, capturing presidents from other countries, invading countries, killing their leaders and things like that, that is something else altogether. Yes. But are you responsible? Are you answerable to your people? That is the measure of governance we must always concentrate on. Yes. So I said, when the president said he fired Yakumba Jaite, I said, we'll not remember you by your roads. When you have time, in the dead of night, you have security, walk along the gardens in the State House and reflect on what you want your legacy to be. It would be governance under law. If that works, then we'll remember you for a very, very long time. That's what happened in countries like the United States. The founders, the institutions they put in place, and how those institutions eventually manage to overwhelm the holders of the Oval Office, because it's always the presidents, the executive, the wielders of executive power within a country are almost always the ones that are in need of being restrained. Those are the people we have to restrain, the wielders of executive power. Other countries control their executives. We need to work on controlling our executive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Darboe. You just told us that Barrow's done very well infrastructurally when it comes to road networking, the road expansion, which is credit for Barrow. But what didn't he do right in 2025 that you wish he'd done better? Something specifically you might think of either in the industry, in many industries that we're looking at, the works industry, the tourism industry, all the other industries. What would you look at and say, you wish he did not do it that way? When I say you, also here, I'm not referring to Barrow as an individual, as a government. You wish they would have done it differently. Yes, they've done something that you appreciated, which is good. But what have they done that is wrong in 2025 or previous years that you wish they would have done it differently?
No, what I'm looking at is governance. You know, today the president has a responsibility to ensure that the nation is governed properly. And that also includes restraint in what the president says publicly about certain things. It also means implementing the law equally between people who are both, say, for example, running afoul of the law. Yes, if somebody says something about a member of the government, it's not okay. You can go and arrest people.
Yes. Insults against public office.
If your own supporters say things about other people who are also leaders within the country, not presidents, maybe not members of the National Assembly, but nevertheless, leadership is very diverse.
Right.
Yeah. So would you let them go scot-free?
Yeah, like if somebody comes out of the blue nowhere, they might neither be NPP or no GDC, but if they attack UDP or you, for example, today at NUP, they should still face full force of the law as if they've insulted anybody who is at either at the National Assembly or at the public office.
No, not insulting individuals.
Because that's the language.
Not insulting individuals. Whatever you do must fit within the law. Say, for example, restraining speech is something which I'm very critical of. I really don't think that should be the fallback position of the government or the default position of the government. You know, somebody says something, you said we don't like it. You know, the private law is there. I'm not talking about the president. The president cannot take private action in a lot of circumstances. He wouldn't be able to. So, and the reasons are clear. If you cannot take somebody to court, then he shouldn't be able to take you to court either. Yes. And if the government is going to intervene, that is the government through its prosecutorial authority, whether that is the police or the Ministry of Justice, you really have to dispense these things fairly. That's all I'm interested in.
Now, because what I am looking at is, Mr. Darboe, in 2025, we've seen a lot of drama unfolding. All these protests, including the national audit, the Gala movement. We've seen people that went and protested against Pura. All these protests happened in 2025. Knowing that this is an election year in 2026, December, do you think these protests are going to continue, or what could have been done differently to allay the fears of people that actually took part in the protests of 2025, in various protests?
Well, those are specific issues. Say, for example, the the gala conversations. I would call them conversations.
Gala conversation. I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Because do they exist today?
Well, they do exist.
But I was told they were not even registered in the first place.
Well, that doesn't matter. You know, you don't need to register all of these things. Protest can be spontaneous. Okay. You can organize it spontaneously, and it would still be within the remit of the law. Okay. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can do that. You know, so it is how we manage protest itself. Say, for example, if the police arrest somebody, what are you hiding? Give people information so they know why they are arrested. Yeah, don't hide people, moving them from station to station and not telling the family members, the friends, the lawyers where they are. All these are aspects of governance. If you are not affected, you would think it is normal, but tomorrow you could be affected. We've seen situations like this. Those who were supporting particular presidents themselves became victims. And, you know, they then begin to realize that the rule of law should be for everybody. Because if you support lawlessness today, because you are in support of the president, then obviously, if you are the victim tomorrow, you want people to come to your support. Yes. I remember one of these great German philosophers during the tumultuous periods of Nazi Germany, the beginnings all the way to when it eventually collapsed in 1944-45. You know, there was this German priest. He said when a particular segment was arrested, they didn't do anything about it because they didn't belong to that segment. Mm. And then another segment of society was targeted, another was targeted, another was targeted. When it was time for him or them to be arrested, there was nobody to fight for anybody else. This is why governance should be key. Our respect for the rule of law must not be situational. If I'm not affected, I don't care. Somebody needs to help you when you are affected. So we can look at what the president did and say we like it. The orders, we can look at the governance structure. Everybody knows what is happening. If you ask me about particular, crisis situations in the country, as long as the matter is not in court right now, we can tell you whether it was done within the law or outside the law.
Now, I have a critical question to ask you, Mr. Mane. Yes, in as much as I would come back to the political question, because the question that people were asking is, you left UDP. You did not form a new party. NUP was there before you left UDP, but they decided to call you and trust in you with power. Why didn't you go to other parties like GDC, which they would love to have somebody of your standard? Why didn't you go to a collaboration with somebody like Keba Amadi Bojang? They would have loved to have somebody of your caliber, plus other political parties, but you still went to NUP. The question is, why NUP? And I really appreciate if you think you want to say this in Mandinka, because Mandinka listeners are listening and they are part of the people that are actually behind you, or any other language you want to use to provide comfort for those that are following you, so that at least we understand that you are not only talking to me or Teledal or only those that speak English. Why NUP and not any other political party?
I didn't go to NUP. Okay. NUP came to me, and I accepted NUP. If the president says...
Are you saying if Adama Barrow was to come to you, you would have gone there?
Why not? What's wrong with Adama Barrow?
Nothing is wrong with Adama Barrow.
Okay, I mean, I don't create distinctions between, like I said, individuals.
Because do you know that they are watching this? Adama Barrow is watching this show, and he would love to hear you say, if you were to come to me, I would have come to you. But this is very important. That's the divergent views of politics and its improvement. Yeah. This is great. Yeah. If NPP came to you and said, we would like you to join us, would you have said yes?
Well, that is now historical.
No, it's not, because coalitions are always meant to be.
Well, yes, but of course the coalition, any coalition with the president equals to supporting the president. I mean, how do you expect a president not to lead a particular coalition? Of course, if you join the president.
I agree,
So
but some people join
I don't know
him.
whether it is a coalition, it's right to call that a coalition or a kind of surrendering your parties.
Surrender. The NRP still exists. GPDP still exists.
Okay, I'm not going into those arguments. I'll accept they exist, yes. But of course, the president is the dominant. The president and his party are the dominant partners in any coalition that involves the NPP. In fact, one of the fundamental issues between that precipitated the formation of the NPP was that exact question.
Okay.
Yes, if you come from a party and you are now president, is it necessary or acceptable for that party to then look for another presidential candidate when your party member is already the president? This was the critical question that led to the breakup between Adama Barrow and the UDP. Yes. So, I mean, if you want to go there, you can go there, but you go there to support the president.
Yes, some people went there to support the president's agenda, but some people also went there having an agenda to amalgamate, to come together, to synchronize and say, look, my agenda at NRP, my agenda at GPDP, my agenda, let's say, for example, with other political parties, Gambia First, is to make sure we have peace. And this man is giving us peace, which is part of our agenda. Yes, I'm there to support part of my agenda that forms his agenda. But the bone of contention is when Adama Barrow said, oops, part of the reason why Ousseynou left me or we left each other at the party of the level, because when Ousseynou was leaving Barrow's administration, NPP wasn't born. Even if they were working on it, but then they were not declared a political party. So therefore, they had to stand out and be who they are. So if, for example, Barrow come to you and still say, you know what, Lamin, you left UDP and I think you left it for a good cause, and I would like you to work with us at NPP, Lamin will say yes.
Well, that is a hypothetical question. You know, for me, the question is not so much, you know, whether you'll join with somebody. Obviously, if you're going to support somebody to be president, the reason why we have to be careful about it is because the presidency has its own rules. And there are constitutional provisions around it. You cannot say the president cannot do this. Some people are suggesting that if they are in a coalition, they're going to have autonomy within their own departments. That cannot be. The president is in charge of the executive arm of government. If that is your thinking, then maybe you shouldn't join a coalition. Because if you join a coalition and somebody becomes president, then it's going to be extremely difficult to control that person. That is why, as recently as yesterday, you know, other political party leaders were suggesting they are not going to join anybody to become flag bearer unless they believe in your integrity and they can trust you. Because once you are in the presidency, in the State House, it's something else altogether.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
You cannot pretend to control a president who is sworn and is already the office holder.
Absolutely.
Yes. So you have to be very careful who you coalesce with. Are they going, do you believe they are going to abide by their word? It's difficult to determine that situation 100%. But based on the little you know about people, you have the opportunity and the ability potentially to be able to tell whether, you can do that, whether
Absolutely.
you can trust that person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know what would be your view on this. I know that at the beginning of of course, the new era coming into the political spheres, Yahya Jammeh left, Adama Barrow came on board. At that time, everybody said it was a good thing that he came on. UDP became very prominent. We're talking about they are the people that form Adama. But they are forgetting that there were other people that were behind that coalition that had to do with, in the persons of course, Fatmata Jallow Tambajang, in the persons of Halifa Sallah, Sidia and them, and all other coalition members, which played a very critical role. Would you consider that coalition a failure?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I wouldn't consider it a failure. 2016 was a critical flashpoint in terms of where we are going as a country. So I think we got the outcome we wanted. The management of the outcome, we can differ on those. But you are right. UDP was among the dominant players electorally. But there were other aspects of the coalition that were not electoral. For example, the management, who were the generals during that period, people like Halifa Sallah. There was no question about that. Say, for example, when you said Winston Churchill was the person who defeated Nazi Germany or who defended the United Kingdom, that is just a hyperbole. But what we are saying is simply that leadership sometimes can be so critical that it can make all the difference. You can have all the resources, but if you are unable to manage those resources properly, then obviously what is going to happen is that the transition itself would have spectacularly failed. Look at the difference between, candidate Barrow and President Jammeh, because that was the standing at the time.
Right.
Yes, Jammeh was president until he left in January 2007. Yes, 2017. Barrow was the president-elect. Yeah, but if you look at the dynamics at that particular time, the difference between Barrow's result and Jammeh's result was very tiny.
Very.
Yeah, was very tiny. So if we look at it critically, can we say other parties did not play any significant role? This was a synergy. You bring different forces together, and then they become more powerful than the individual parts of the group itself. So that was what happened in 2016. Yes, different power players were there, but those power plays in themselves were not sufficient to dislodge the president from office. The difference between them is under 20,000 votes. That's a very, very small vote. Yeah, it's just like if you take Combo South and other parts.
Part of the reason that created that impasse was that, because the guy felt like, no, it just cannot be real.
Yeah.
Now, there's just a by-election that passed in Kiang and I think another region as well. In Bantanjang. Bantanjang, right? Now, Barrow came out and said that is a lesson for the opposition. Now, the reason I'm asking you this question is because I know you didn't put up a candidate there, but other parties did, like, for example, the UDP. How do you intend to maneuver with the NUP to make an impact before elections, knowing very well that we have literally 11 months to elections?
Well, it's a long period of time. You can say it is short, but it's also very long. So we are not worried about that. It probably was a lesson for the opposition. That is the narrative the president would want to project to the public. But those who took time to analyze the results said that these are NPP councilorships.
The zones
so,
are...
Yeah, they just re-elected somebody, people, to their previous seats, to seats that they held, So it's not a lesson as such. Yeah, it's not a lesson as such. The president's party, the NPP, maintained their seats. Yeah. So if you look at the demographics around those areas, all those are also very important.
Bantaja and Kayaf,
yeah,
not that much significant.
So then people say, and I believe that is a fair analysis as well, that the president should look at his own figures and accept that his voter percentage actually shrinked, and it did. So we don't know. Those are inconclusive elections. Yeah, those are inconclusive elections. So if you come to particular sections of the country, there are sections that you cannot persuade. They are for particular political parties, and that's how they are going to vote, regardless of what happened. So in that regard, you could say the president was lucky. But
Barrow was lucky to win there.
Well, he maintained his own seat.
That's not luck if you look at it. Luck is something you did not foresee, and it shows up.
No. The president was lucky. They could have. There was a possibility that they could lose those areas.
Okay.
Yes. So let him do his work, and let the opposition do its work. And at the end of the day, we will be appealing to the independent electorate to say, partisanship as to who becomes president is not going to take you or the country anywhere.
Well, I intend to have them on the show soon.
Yeah, like the people, observers would say, we go to the same markets. There are no NPP markets. There are no other political party
No tribal,
markets.
no nothing, no religion.
Yeah, so we go to the same markets. Look at the interest of the country. Don't look at the transient majorities. Who is the majority today? Who is the incumbent today? That is not the way you analyze the direction of a country. When you are analyzing the direction of the country, you have to look at the interest of everybody within that country. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, Lamin J. Darboe. We really appreciate you coming to this show today. I'm just reminding our viewers that following us at Teledal on our social media handles, people on the diaspora. We highly appreciate the followership on TikTok and Instagram as well. And of course, we've got Lamin J. Darboe's stance on the critical issues that matter to the Gambia today on the Fix Show. We will go for a short break, but when we come back, we'll change of course, the mantra of the topic, and then we will go into a little bit of more of the critical issues to ask you what you would do as a president to change the narrative.
I have something in
I understand that, but we will be right back after this break, and we will make it short and precise.
We've got fantastic new social media bundles just for you. Here are your options.
50 megabytes for $10 is valid for 1 day.
Enjoy 400 megabytes for $40, valid for 7 days.
Get a massive 1,200 megabytes for $100 is only valid for 7 days.
Simply dial *120# and press 3 to pick the social media bundle that suits you best. Subscribe now.
Why settle for one when you can talk with two? With the Africell TOK service. For just $99, you get a massive 1,200 minutes of talk time to share between your two favorite people. To activate, dial *135#, select your two Africell numbers, and you're locked in for a full month of conversations. Africell, connecting you to your peoples.
Thank you very much, Lamin J. Darboe. We have in our studios today, like I said earlier on with The Fix, I am your host, Mohamed Jallo. Mr. Darboe, something of critical and of personal touch to me as well, as an individual. I know the platform is an international platform, it's a national platform, but there are issues that are actually pertinent to the citizens of this country. And most recently, we've seen tragedies through the back way. people dying using boats, which I am actually a victim of, and some family members that I know, looking at, of course, hundreds of young people trying to go through the back way. And I've hosted a young person here on the Fixo, and the guy said it doesn't matter how many times he gets returned, as long as he did not die on the way, he's going back. So what would NUP government do to mitigate or to literally alleviate some of these problems that are, touching the young people who are the cream de la cream of the society today?
Well, it's a difficult topic, obviously, because the decision to go on the back way, most of the time, is a personal decision. The motivations may be different. But so where do you put the responsibilities? That, again, should be a national conversation, I believe. Government should organize a conversation around it. The government's perspective, the perspectives of the young people who go on these journeys, and see whether we can understand each other, whether there can be a common position. Because this is, for some people, or for anybody who participates in it, maybe they would see it as a survival issue. I am going to the back way so that I can accomplish some of the visions I have for my family. Some would tell you, my friends traveled. They've now taken their parents to Mecca. They've built nice houses and things like that. Those are kind of the motivations for some other people. So many people, I would say, really, for all of them. Now, where you are going to come, and this has to be discussed honestly, is whether you can place that blame on the government alone, or whether those who embark on the back way, the larger society that pressures young people to the fact that you cannot make it in this country, you must travel. Whether those young people and their families have some level of responsibility there. Organize a conversation around it, get the different sides of the story, and ultimately see whether you can craft a policy around it.
Now, that's where exactly I was heading to.
Yes.
The law of the land, the Constitution, is silent about human smuggling. How do they criminalize agents, criminalize boat owners? How would they even criminalize? In fact, some of the people that take the journey are being headed by people that are fishermen, because they play a key role by saying, we have a navigational aid, we have life jacket, we know the road, we know the distance, we know. But if you take those people to court, with your knowledge in the law, and it's still silent, what do you think? There's no criminal, of course, clause within the law to say these people are supposed to be prosecuted and sentenced for this term, punishment is this. It's not there. Well,
it is not in the Constitution. Trafficking in persons is against the law. That is part of the laws of the Gambia. So that is an aspect of the law that may be considered, but really, I don't think it is pertinent to the backway syndrome. Yeah, you have to think about that, and you are going to have to craft a law around it, because these are Gambian citizens.
Absolutely.
They have a right to live, and they have a right to come back. If you are going to control that right, then you are going to have to come with legislation.
Okay.
That is in conformity with the constitutional provisions. You are right, there is nothing in the Constitution against human trafficking or trafficking in persons. It's called Trafficking in Persons Act. Yes. So there is nothing there. And some people are saying you can prosecute those who violated the law under that particular act. I'm not sure. The factual circumstances would have to allow you to do that, because otherwise you can commence a prosecution that will not succeed.
It will go anywhere.
Yeah, it's not succeed. Trafficking, as delineated under the law, is not in conformity, cannot support a case that is dealing exclusively with the back way. Trafficking cannot support it. If you prosecute somebody under trafficking, and what you are dealing with is voluntary departure from the Gambia by individuals, it cannot be considered trafficking. So right now you can say the law
So
is
are you
not,
saying trafficking is done when it is against the will of the individual?
that is a critical element there.
Okay.
Yes, against the will of the individual, through deception, through lies, and things like that. This one, you go and look for agents yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You want to know, who is organizing this at Kato, who is organizing it at Gunjur, who is organizing it at Jinak, who is organizing it at Burfoot.
They're all over the place.
Yes, who is organizing it at Tanje. So you are going there yourself and saying, look, I want to go.
Pay your money.
I fancy this, I want to go. Yes, that is a past case, a magistrate's court matter at Berkama. 4 people, This was, again, they were charged with Trafficking in Persons Act, under the Trafficking in Persons Act. They went to the magistrate's court and pleaded guilty. Yeah, But if you plead guilty or you are found guilty, the mandatory prison sentence is 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So do you understand what you are pleading guilty to? We realized they didn't, because what they participated in was not trafficking under the law. Yeah. That was not trafficking under the law. So we appealed the matter. And this was about 3 years ago. And the High Court acquitted and discharged all of them. Even though, yes, they were engaged in assisting people to travel through the back way, but it's not trafficking. That was banned under the law. So this back way, the government has to think carefully.
Again, that's where I was heading. What would you tell the government?
Yes. Well, they have to craft a law, that can be in conformity with the constitutional principles on migration, that is leaving and returning to the Gambia. Yes. If you cannot do that, and, a judicial officer, whether a magistrate or a judge, is looking at the matter objectively within the contours of the law, it will be very difficult to convict people.
Wow.
Yeah. The danger is, if you prosecute people, sometimes there is a danger in there. Whether they did anything wrong or right, they could be convicted. Yeah, that danger is always there. That is why wrongful prosecution must not be encouraged.
Absolutely. We thank you so much, Lamin J. Darboe. I would just like you to take your, of course, exiting remarks. And being a flag bearer of the National Unity Party, a former member of the UDP, of course, today you are not an ordinary Gambian. You would like to take this opportunity at Teledal, and we are so honored to host you here to speak to the Gambians and tell them, what message do you have that is coming from the entire executive of your political party, and what do Gambians expect to see and hear and see you acting upon from the National Unity Party? Again, like I said, we're really honored, and thank you so much for coming to the Fix Show this week.
Not necessarily what is coming from the entire executive of my party, as you said, but my own personal view about how Gambians should look at the 2026 elections. Yes. Of course, politics is intensive. Sometimes, it comes with a lot of emotions and things like that. But at the end of the day, all you need to look at is, am I doing the right thing? Am I looking at the interest of the Gambia? Or am I just concentrated on the present? You cannot be concentrated on the present. You have to look at the future. Leaders come and go. Presidents come and go. And in this country, 2 leaders were forced out of office. Yes. Jawara was forced out of office. President Jammeh was forced out of office. So at the end of the day, we don't want our leaders to leave outside this country if they are no longer in office. We want them to be able to live in the Gambia here. So what are we saying? We are saying support leaders who are committed to the present and the future of this country. Leaders whose vision is about a Gambia where everybody can live in dignity, respect, protection under the law. Yes. The transient leaderships that we concentrate on are not in the long-term interest of the country. You cannot run a country for many, many years and then leave the country the day you are no longer in power. That in itself is a commentary on your own failures, because you are telling us, I'm afraid. What are you afraid of? You are afraid of some of the things you've done yourself. So I'm saying, think about the Gambia. At the end of the day, that is where our collective salvation lies in. We must restrain our leaders, not by bullets, by weapons and things like that. We must restrain them within the law. Yeah, if you're going to vote for somebody, make sure you know who you are voting for. Like I said, there is a percentage of the electorate that we lost. Those people will never vote objectively. But the independent voters, those who know what government is really about, should concentrate on whether this man we are voting for has the capacity to run the country. When I say capacity, I'm talking about, will he, that person, or she, manage the affairs of the country to the best interest of everybody who lives within that country? If your answer is no, your decision is left to you. But at the end of the day, we agreed there are no party markets in this country. There are just markets for people who live in the Gambia. Yes.
Thank you very much, Lamin J. Darboe, Secretary General and Flag Bearer of the National Unity Party. We are grateful and honored to host you at the Fix. And of course, we are so grateful for our viewers on social media handles that we have. People on the ground as Gambians as well, and people as Gambian, but also abroad and the diaspora. On all our social media followers, we thank you for being part of this show from the beginning to the end. This is Teledal, and this is the Fix Show, and I am your host, Mohamed Jallow. We look forward to having, of course, another exciting episode next Friday. And until then, we wish you all the best. Thank you.
Every time you buy credit or data, that's a speed and win waiting on your My Africell app. 50 megabytes, 100 megabytes, 5 gigabytes of internet data. Sitanga. Credit or data purchases, spin and win rec. Africell and AfriMoney, where loyalty pays and the fun never fades.